just let people settle down, take their seats, and we'll begin momentarily. Okay, thank you very much. We're now going to come on to our second industry session. This is going to be on technology, growth and innovation. And in a moment, I'll introduce the chair, and from there, she will introduce her panel members. But I'd like to start with just a very brief anecdote, which takes me back nearly 10 years. And literally, just short of 10 years ago, I found myself standing at about 1 o'clock in the morning on the runway at Erbil Airport, with no phone reception. This was before the days of the Flybe daily hops from Dubai. And I was waiting to meet a young man whose responsibility it was to build the technology strategy for the government of the KRG. And I met this individual, and we found ourselves chatting, and it was the first of many visits, and indeed the first of first meeting of what became a very strong friendship over the years. And 10 years ago or so, we realized that actually there was a lot of work that needed to be done in technology, and a lot of work has been done since then. But as Lord Howell was just mentioning, the rate of change and acceleration in that field is profound, and therefore at any point where you think you're getting on top of it, clearly you're not, and you've got to keep working. But that young man was Botan, and it's lovely to see he's still here and moved into a different role, but clearly still right on the forefront of technology, so thank you very much. Maeve Walsh is a Deputy Director in the Digital Economy Unit in DCMS, which is the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. And she'll be chairing our panel today. Thank you very much. I know how busy you are. Thank you for coming in today. Over to you.
Thank you, Alistair. I'm delighted to be here today. I'll start by introducing the panel here, who will spend a bit of time talking about their particular areas of interest before we open up for discussion. And I'll set out a little bit about why I'm here and what my interest is in the UK government too. But first of all, on my left, I've got Yazen Altimimi, who's the CEO of ZainCash, who will be setting out a presentation on the work that they're doing at the moment around payment systems. Then Omar Hassan, who's the CEO and co-founder of Inervert.com, which is doing some very interesting work around bringing together some big corporates and startups and really trying to drive innovation. Then Botan Osman from Restrata, who have a focus particularly of interest to me on cyber security and resilience. And finally, Iain Rawlinson, who's from Gulftainer, and who'll be talking about their particular interests in technology and innovation. So a fantastic panel who'll be able to discuss a broad range of issues relating to this area. So I'm the Deputy Director in the Digital Economy Unit in the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. And it's worth just setting out briefly why the Department for Culture, Media and Sport is doing digital. We have the bulk of the UK government's policy making interests across digital technology in this department. We look at things like infrastructure, so the rollout of broadband and mobile telecommunications. There was a big announcement recently in terms of investing in next generation fibre and 5G, so very strong infrastructure interest. We lead on digital skills across the UK government, working very closely with the Department for Education, but also making sure that we keep a focus on digital inclusion and engagement and keeping the whole population on board on this. We have a large team running the government's cybersecurity programme. This is a 1.7 billion programme, co-led with the Cabinet Office, but again, a huge delivery focus and very important technological developments within that too. We lead on data protection, on internet safety and strategy around that. And then my team has been responsible for coordinating the UK digital strategy, which was published at the beginning of March. That strategy has 7 particular pillars, and a number of these are again represented in the presentations that we'll hear today. So in order to really ensure that the UK remains one of the world's leading digital economies, and that the UK can be one of the best places to start and grow a digital business, we recognised that we needed work on infrastructure, on skills, on support for entrepreneurs and for digital businesses and startups, critically on ensuring that wider industries and economies can actually adopt digital technology and begin to grow and innovate. We do a lot of work, and in fact possibly sort of world-leading around GovTech, so the digitisation of government services themselves, and then cybersecurity and data. So all of those things combined have been the kind of underpinning of the UK's digital strategy, and it's my team's role now to take that forward and implement it. So as I said, I'm delighted to be here today to hear about the corresponding interests in Iraq. And without any further ado, I'll hand over to Yazen to talk about ZainCash.
Thanks so much. Okay, just first off, I just want to say how much the way we approach payments and cash and electronic payment, how it affects the economy overall and how it drives Iraq's economy. Just an overview of how much cash have an impact on the economy. 3% of a GDP of any country would be a loss if it's dealt with high cash based. Given Iraq's GDP, that means we're losing about what's worth of building 2 Burj Khalifas every year of the current GDP of $230 billion a year in Iraq. It also affects companies, small to medium to large businesses. Based on studies, about 33% of a revenue of a company is being lost because of dealing with cash. This goes to the security of the cash, the operation, the collection, etc. And especially given the situation of Iraq that we all know, it really wipes out any control or any monitoring of corruption, etc., if everything is dealt by cash. Now, if we look at the overall view of Iraq, we see that it's a really highly unbanked population. Over 90% people don't have bank accounts, and the 10% who have bank accounts usually don't really use them. They just have them because they receive their salaries, then they cash out. But on the other hand, the majority have mobile phones. They all use them. It's always in their hands. Usually Iraqis minimum have 2-3 phones in their hands if you live in Baghdad. And so with the central bank, we got a license to create basically a bank account on a mobile phone. So the individual can have a bank account, cash in at one of the locations, of our thousands of locations, and cash it out and then deal with it normally. So we have 2 companies that are focused on electronic payments, which is Iraq Wallet, which is in partnership with Zain Teleco. We started ZainCash. This model is pretty successful in Africa and Pakistan with M-Pesa and EasyPesa, etc. And I think it's going to be a very success in Iraq. Now, what can you do with this? I'm sorry, the presentation is Arabic while I'm speaking English to cater to everyone. So with this wallet, we're enabling bill payments, merchant payment. Currently, we have a few schools on board to actually get payments, and some airlines companies are on board. Mainly, the private companies are coming on board, while the government entities, which is the majority, we're actually facing some challenges due to bureaucracy, etc. But we're hoping if any government stakeholders here to assist us in moving the payments into electronic and improve the economy. We're actually providing a global level of electronic payments where we enable real-time monitoring of payments. So for example, let's say, just an example of the ministries, let's say of electricity, who would accept payments electronically, would see the payments quickly in real time. This would improve the way people pay, ease payments, and then you'll have further control. We're also with a company called Iraq eGate, which is a sister company. We're providing different channels for payments. It's very similar to a model in Egypt called Fawri, where an individual can pay through any agent close to him, through the mobile phone, through a phone, through the web, and as well through the banks and ATM machines. So this is being rolled out now gradually, and we're starting mainly with the mobile. One of the things that we also offer is electronic salary disbursement. For example, we have a project with the UN currently for dispersing cash to refugees and displaced individuals. One of the main, or the hot topics is Mosul. Now we started dispersing cash to displaced individuals in Mosul, the liberated areas, and hopefully we'll go to the west side once things stabilize. These are actually pictures from the UN. They went to a Zain location and cashed out after they received the money to their wallets instantly. So by that, the UN can know who received it, when, where they cashed it out, etc. The traditional way was giving cash. They did not know where this money went or who cashed it out. Also, what we're providing is an easy way for people to transfer money. If someone has a wallet in, let's say, in north of Iraq, can send money to someone in the south, in Basra, and then the guy can cash it out at any agent of ours. One of the things that we're also pushing for is e-commerce. We have a lot of small businesses currently selling on Facebook, and we're actually partnering with Facebook to enable small and entrepreneurs to sell goods through their e-commerce, something that can drive also the economy. I would also just point out a few services that we have. We're enabling also an easy way for the youngsters, since this is the main market for us, is ability to pay the iTunes or buy them instantly from your application, or even topping up your phone instead of going to a location to buy the plastic the traditional way. And we have, currently we cover all of Iraq, and it's very easy to actually have agents, especially for example with Mosul. In 3 weeks we would have independent agents to allow the people in need to get the cash in these areas. You can know them through your phone, by the GPS, and these are one of we're really actually proud of these two projects, which is the ICRC and the UNHCR, where we're able to really support the refugees and displaced individuals with this technology. And we're hoping to move everyone digitally, because we know that it's an obvious way forward, and we're hoping that the government would move quicker into this space. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Yazen. We'll have some questions later on from the floor. But if I move on now to Omar Hassan to talk a little bit about Inervert's work.
Thanks, Maeve. Firstly, assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure being here, and thanks to the IBBC for actually bringing a conversation around tech and innovation to one of these forums. I've spent the last 5-6 years across the region talking tech, innovation, and seeing what's happening on the ground. And for once, the conversation's on Iraq, so that's a great move in the right direction. I'll give you a quick overview about what is Inervert and sort of the stuff we've been seeing in the region. We launched Inervert in 2015 as a global platform connecting corporates, so larger businesses and startups, as a way to give them access to new markets and scale. Since then, the operations are London, Dubai, and Mumbai. And we're driven by impact and innovation. I remember back in 2013 when I used to work at London Partners, which is an office of the Mayor of London, and we're looking at investments and growth. I remember saying to Sir Edward Lister at the time, we should be looking at the MENA region for entrepreneurs and innovation rather than real estate and nice big trophy assets. At the time, it didn't make sense, and I'm glad that we're now moving in the right direction. As Inervert, we run corporate innovation programs. We do a lot of capacity building work with the European Investment Bank and the African Development Bank across North Africa and the Middle East, and that's around how to enable ecosystems and how to drive innovation and entrepreneurship. And we also manage a venture fund that we invest into early seed capital and growth capital around the Series A. When Ashley asked me to talk about MENA and innovation, I Googled, because one of the biggest issues is data, to actually see what's happening on the ground. But this is a headline from the BBC, and it says how MENA tech scene is thriving from bombs to bytes. And that's one of the biggest challenges. When we speak to somebody and say, look, you should be looking at the MENA region for entrepreneurship, for innovation, their assumption is always there's bombs, there's unstable environments, why should we? And hopefully that is all changing through various work that various bodies are doing. But to give you an idea, back in 2011, when the talk of entrepreneurship kicked off, there was always 3 challenges: culture, environment, and opportunity. Are we as Arabs, is it within our culture to look at entrepreneurship? Is it acceptable to say to your parents, I'm not going to work for PwC or EY after many years of studying, I'm going to go do a startup? It's not, but that's changing. I remember telling my parents when I first started on my first startup is, I'm not going to work, I'm going to do a startup. They said, "Bas Omar, all this money we've invested in education, and what's this person, that person's going to say." So changing the cultural mindset of the region was always a big challenge. Is it acceptable? Is failure acceptable? How would that be foreseen? And that's moving in the right direction, and I'll share some facts with you in a bit. The environment was always a challenge. Is the legal structure in place? Can you set up a fintech business? Can you set up an e-commerce business? How are you going to register that company? How are you going to transfer money? And that's improving a lot, and we've seen the work that's been done in Dubai around legislating the set up of your business, but also bankruptcy laws has kind of helped. There's a pros and cons to it, because all our talent is going to Dubai, so some will question if that's the right option or not. The third challenge was always the opportunity. How easy is it for you to scale a business from Iraq to Amman or to Egypt to Dubai? And how can you do that? So that's improving now with the various setups across the region and the ability to move from one place to another. MENA has taken a huge leap in the last sort of 5 or 6 years. The one thing that has never been a challenge, and I guess that's not going to change in Iraq, was the talent, the supply of talent. As a region, we're very well educated, we're very fluent in many languages, and we have a massive community abroad that we can tap into. So the talent was never an issue. It's about giving that talent the ecosystem to thrive. And what's happened, this slide is a bit later. So in the last sort of 5 years or so, there's been over $1 billion in exits, slightly skewed because Souk.com exited last week for about 650 million. But the exits are there now. People are recognizing the region as a region for innovation. There's over 100 VCs or so in the region, providing anything from $25,000 checks all the way up to follow-on funding of $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. And the biggest factor of it, what we've seen, is that this is creating jobs and growth. Startups are creating jobs, they are creating growth in their regional hubs. When we talk about talent, this is something I took from WAMDA recently. If you look at the levels, high levels of education in the region, and unfortunately none of the stuff that's online takes into consideration Iraq, which hopefully that will be changing soon. But you can see talent is never an issue, education is never an issue. So how do we transfer that? Over the last 6 years, you've seen over a network of over 160 support networks in the region. Anything from Oasis 500, which is, I think, probably one of the first out of Amman, to things like Speed in Lebanon, Endeavor globally, bringing global know-how into the region, and events such as Rise Up in Egypt and Step in Dubai, which is bringing the ecosystem together. One of the other challenges has always been, how do we transfer the know-how of our expats, or Iraqis, Egyptians, Lebanese living abroad, and how do we get them to mentor the youth and the startups? And this is one of the strongest things that you can do for a startup, is provide that mentor network. And we've seen here in London, and I've noticed Ben sitting around here, places like Level 39, places like Startup Bootcamp, who there you go, he's happy now, he'll tweet that in a second. They provide a strong mentor network, and if we look across the room here, how many of you guys are here who can contribute back to Iraq from experience, from know-how, from business, and how can we transfer that to startups coming up in the country to succeed and scale? I don't like talking about Dubai a lot, but if we look at these two infographs here, is looking at sort of access to capital and investor landscape. A big majority of it is based in Dubai. Dubai has created this hub for entrepreneurs to scale to and raise and access follow-on funding. So how can we replicate something like this? How can we give early stage capital access to people in Baghdad, entrepreneurs looking to start businesses and scale? The one thing that I would say that we have seen over the years in MENA is that there's been a lot of emphasis on bringing external know-how in. So a lot of people will go to the Valley, will go to London, will go to all these places and say, look, can we replicate what you're doing? The most important thing is to do things locally, to look at local strengths and weaknesses and improve on that and adapt things to the local market. We've seen many things. You look at places like Dubai, where there's many sort of $300 million accelerators popping up, trying to replicate what's happening in the Bay Area, what's happening here, which doesn't work. Again, going back to the talent that we have on the ground, the most important thing is how do we use forums like this to connect the know-how and the expertise, and to look at doing things locally with a local difference, as such as someone like HSBC would say. So happy to kind of delve into this later on with anybody and sort of share a bit more if you have any questions.
Great, thank you, Omar. So I'll hand over now to Botan Osman to talk a little bit about Restrata's work.
Thanks very much. Really good to be here, and I'm going to focus around technology rather than specifically what we do in Iraq, and really a pleasure to be at these IBBC conferences, and it's fantastic to see that IBBC's push and belief continues as time goes by, and it's great to see Alistair here. 10 years, haven't done much. It's good. It's still looking the same. Look, technology is a really close topic to my heart. I've always been in technology, whether it's my days as a teenage computer programmer, or as my parents called it, computer breaker, to helping here in the UK with organisations such as the NHS and policy development agencies work out how we can use technology to get better results, or my time in the Kurdistan regional government of Iraq, as Alistair mentioned, where 10 years ago we worked together to try and understand how ICT can encourage a more transparent and a better governed sort of system. So technology has always been a force for change, and now in Restrata, proud to use technology to protect lives and assets, using it as a force for good. But technology, as far as Iraq is concerned, to me is fundamental, because Iraq's economy and its diversification is essential for its survival and its growth, especially in this era of constant turbulence. Iraq, after decades of isolation, was reconnected to the world via the internet. And since then, there's been a steady growth where connectivity has been spreading and knowledge has been spreading across the country. And this, coupled with the returning diaspora that Omar mentioned, and global companies working in Iraq, brings new services and technologies, and most importantly, know-how and transfer. So these things combined should help us start to see a diversified economy emerging, where an entrepreneurial young generation embarks on building new industries in Iraq that are away from oil and gas. But technology and infrastructure enablement is key to this, and without that, you won't be able to see the growth that we can potentially see, because it enables empowerment of individuals, and it also democratizes access to government services, which are two things that can really help move things forward. But as things get more and more connected, the cyber threat increases. However, with technology development, you're going to get more things online. We're now truly in the era of the Internet of Things. 2012 saw the year where we went from having 7 billion devices to 8.7 billion devices connected, more devices than people on Earth. And now we are at 28.4 billion devices. In 2020, we'll hit 50 billion devices. That's a lot of IP addresses that are vulnerable to attack. So with every device connected, the risk increases, and I guess the technology infrastructure focus has got to be coupled with taking the cyber risk seriously, especially in Iraq, where the fundamental sort of bases may not be as developed as elsewhere. So we need to kind of help think about how we, A, mitigate, but B, respond if something was to happen. And this involves sort of detailed preparation beyond hardware. It's about thinking about what could potentially happen and having the ability to respond to that. But also we've seen physical security advancements in Iraq, where we've gone from the traditional ways of protecting assets to using the latest technology. So from a security, sort of physical security perspective, we've seen development in technologies such as detection, wide area surveillance, thermal technologies, sonar technologies, etc., that are helping clients protect themselves in more advanced ways. This is helping companies move towards an era where they can focus on their core business rather than the security challenges in the region. And we, as Restrata, have helped many companies do this. and take advantage of the latest technologies by employing, either bringing them in or employing advanced designs for them. So although traditionally in Iraq we've always focused on physical security, I think really as Iraq comes more and more online, the cyber threat has got to be balanced in the way that we see it. But looking back at investment in technology, which again is fundamental to Iraq's growth, during my time in Iraq and subsequently delivering project for Restrata in the region, I see a few things that are stopping or reducing the necessary investment in technology. One is the political will to invest in technology as a priority rather than as a nice to have. Two is prioritizing long-term economic value over short-term quick wins, which could be politically more valuable in the medium term. Finally, it's the limited internet access and low bandwidth and the lack of technical skills and availability of know-how. And those three things need to be tackled in parallel. So with all these challenges in mind, it's up to all of us really in this room and elsewhere to try and encourage strategic investment in technology that supports Iraq's economy, that enables accessibility to government and increases the power of individuals. And with 20% of Iraq's population between 15 and 25, that's a big youth population that with technology and education, you can turn this demographic challenge, which it is a challenge today, to an opportunity, and you re-engaging Iraq's youth into a productive economy, and keeping them away from the things that some groups may want them to be engaged in as an alternative. So just to close, at Restrata, we're very proud of our history in Iraq. We've been delivering projects in Iraq for over a decade, and we've seen tremendous opportunity and challenge, and we believe that this will continue. We're continually innovating to help our clients be more resilient, try and feel more secure, helping them with the right mitigations and responses in place to ensure their business continuity, so that they can focus and have the peace of mind to focus on innovation and technology in their core businesses. And that's it, really. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Botan. And finally, over to Iain Rawlinson from Gulftainer.
Thank you. I'm coming at the question of technology from quite a different standpoint than my colleagues here today. We're not a technology company, but we are users in country. And there are definite parallels with Yazen's comments earlier. Gulftainer is a Middle East-based, multiple award-winning terminal operator and logistics company. And we have operations in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, the USA, and Iraq. We've been in existence for over 40 years. Since 1976, when we opened the Middle East's first dedicated container terminal, to today, where we've recently opened a facility in Lebanon. In Iraq, we operate 2 container terminals in Qasr, as well as the Qasr Logistics Center, a large logistics facility which is connected to the port of Qasr. The container terminal industry came into existence a scant 60 years ago, in 1956, making us a relatively young industry, although perhaps a little older than some of my colleagues here. And yet in 60 years of existence, there have been remarkably few technological innovations. We still move large rectangular boxes on and off ships using industrial cranes. Granted, now some of these cranes can lift up to 6 containers at a time, and there are a number of container terminals around the world which operate with automated cranes and trucks. But in real terms, the industry remains as it was at its inception. Now at Gulftainer, we're exploring what recent changes in technology mean for us and for our customers, and most importantly, which technologies, if any, will be relevant to our customers' experience in the markets in which we serve. Iraq, for instance, is currently a relatively unsophisticated economy, where unemployment is high, meaning that labor is fairly readily available, so there is little or no value in installing automated terminal handling equipment. However, it is also a country which faces challenges with corruption. Accurate figures of the global or regional cost of corruption are hard to come by, but it's estimated that inefficiency, red tape, and corruption can increase supply chain costs by as much as 10%. Gulftainer has a zero-tolerance policy on fraud and corruption, but the battle is not won overnight and requires that all stakeholders work together. And for us, this is where technology is hugely relevant in Iraq today. We manage our financial and ERP systems through a centralized system, which in turn is integrated into our terminal operating system, ensuring that all processes are transparent and fully accounted for. Within Gulftainer's Amkasa Logistics Center, we're rolling out a booking and visibility system for all cargo handled, again, ensuring that we maintain visibility of cargo throughout the period while we're handling it, from receipt in country through to delivery to final destination. Simply put, visibility creates accountability and transparency. However, the major area over which we have no control and where the greatest potential for corruption exists is through the customs clearance and duty payment process. In Iraq, this continues to be an entirely manual, paper-based process, and this creates significant potential for abuse. We've seen in other countries where we operate that digitizing the customs clearance process significantly reduces the potential for abuse of this kind. Again, technology creates visibility, visibility drives transparency, transparency drives accountability, and accountability drives integrity. So while Gulftainer possess the infrastructure and systems to ensure that cargo moves into Iraq like a finely tuned machine, Iraq's opaque manual processes act as a spanner in the works. Moving forward, I'd like to very quickly turn to future potential as an alternative view of transportation and technology in Iraq. Are we heading for a global paradigm shift with the advent of 3D printing? A shift from low-cost manufacturing nations to manufacturing at point of consumption, from finished goods to raw material transportation, a shift of trade routes from sourcing from origins of raw materials, a shift to transportation of semi-processed raw materials or 3D printing cartridges. And the immediate relevance to Iraq, 3D printing is not just about printing small objects. The Iraqi government has initiated talks with companies in China to print houses, enabling the creation of essential infrastructure at low cost and incredibly high speed. We see, however, that there will be a continued need for warehousing, storage, manufacturing and distribution services to support the 3D printing technology, meaning that facilities such as our UQLC will remain essential. While to some this may seem to be the death knell of the transportation industry, technology destroying what we've built up over the last 60 years, we view it rather as a change in paradigm, but one which will still require the transportation and storage of raw materials, and for larger products, final mile distribution of finished goods from central printing stations to end users. Thank you.
Thank you, Iain. Thank you to all the panel. I think just hearing some of that, there are some really optimistic building blocks there, I think, for the future of the Iraq digital economy. I was particularly struck by Omar's description of the kind of entrepreneurial culture, of the opportunities around a very young and educated population, and how that in itself can start building strong ecosystems and strong networks and provide the sort of context for born digital businesses. And I think also the focus on things like cashless payments and e-commerce and cybersecurity and even 3D printing, using technological advances to really not just create opportunities but solve some significant problems is really sort of positive too. So I'd like to open it up now to the floor for people to ask questions or comments or discussions. At the back there, please.
Pádraig O'Hanley from Iraq Business News. My question to the panel relates to connectivity, because obviously for all of these services you need proper internet connectivity, and that's always a challenge in Iraq, and not just from an infrastructural point of view but also even from a policy point of view. We've seen communication networks shut down, for example, during exam times to prevent cheating. And my question is, to what extent is that holding Iraq back, and also what's being done about it? Thank you.
Who'd like to take that?
Yeah, I'll take it. So the internet, especially that hour during exam, do affect us as a business as well. So we can't work for a whole hour. I'm not sure how much the economy would lose money because of this. But I think internet overall is at a good speed with 3G, not the KRI region, but the middle and south, and the KRI you have the 4G as well. So with the internet, it's actually pretty fast, and they're currently, I believe, they're in the execution of the fiber Like now they're digging in the roads, and we're seeing it in Baghdad that they're digging into the fiber. So I believe it's a good speed to run e-commerce and businesses, and it's going and improving as we go. So I'm personally very optimistic about it.
I think there's a fundamental disconnect usually between those making the policy around internet and what internet actually requires, what the digital economy requires. I experienced that in my time at government when we were having discussions with parliaments, both parliaments in Kurdistan and in Iraq, about what is actually required. There is a disconnect. So you'll find that there are ways, of course, to stop cheating in exams, and to shut down an entire country is probably not the way to do it. So I think that policy disconnect between what was really required and the decisions made up there will continue to be a challenge, and bridging that gap will avoid issues like this moving forward.
Another question from the floor. Yes, over there.
حسن السجاد المحمود عضو مجلس إدارة اتحاد الصناعات المثنى. من الضامن عندما نستخدم زين كاش على المبالغ التي ندفعها على زين كاش؟ من الذي يعني يضمن لنا هاي؟ السؤال الأول. السؤال الثاني، هي زين كاش لحد الآن ليس لديها ثقة عند المستهلك العراقي. نضع الكارت نجد الرصيد غير موجود أو مسروق، كيف نضع فلوسنا عندهم؟ السؤال الثاني، شكرا.
السؤال الأول ممكن بس السؤال الأول مرة ثانية؟ السؤال الأول ممكن تعيده؟
السؤال الأول، من الضامن لو وضعنا فلوسنا يعني؟
أوكي.
مثلا المصارف الحكومية البنك المركزي، المصارف اللي هي البنك المركزي، وما ينطوهم هم يعني، مو يعني.
اوكي. السؤال الأول، احنا مرخصين من البنك المركزي، وأول الكابيتال أو أول استثمار حطيناه هو 10 مليون دولار، أو المفروض يكون بالبنك. وأي إي ماني هي العملة مالت المحفظة هي إي ماني أو فيرتشوال ماني، الدينار الإلكتروني. أي دينار إلكتروني ينطلع بالمحفظة لازم يساوي لدينار بالبنك بالمصرف. حاليا مثلا نشتغل ويا مصرف بغداد، والبنك المركزي دائما يسوي مراقبة علينا. السؤال الثاني، هذا لموضوع زين، ما أعتقد هاي الشغلة تصير، يعني ماكو أي رصيد ينقطع من عندك، بس بلكن استخدمت الانترنت شوي هواي. لا بس احنا ما تصير هاي طبعا هاي الشغله، يعني احنا
انتم غيرتوا من النظام الدقيقه الى الثانيه، وصار ال 12 دولار ما نستخدم بها 50 مثلا، على فرض 50 دقيقه قمنا نستخدم 30 دقيقه، قمتوا تسرقونا يعني استغليتوا الفقره بالنظام.
ما اشياء. هسه اذا عندك اي استفسار عن الموضوع
ولا تطلب 107 يراد لك 3 ايام يلا تحصل سرقه.
استفسرت من حط الملاحظه عندي.
Okay, another question? Yes.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you for the information. My name is Hassan Ibadi from Iraq, Ministry of Transport, General Company for Ports of Iraq. Actually, I'm working in that company. I never seen UK companies attend some technical projects. I don't know why. Exactly in Mkasser Airport and Korsber Port and also Al Maqal Port. And I think this is a good time to enjoy the companies for a new project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Omar.
I won't talk from a port angle, but we launched an initiative a year and a half ago called the UK MENA Hub. And it's the way to help UK companies or UK innovation and the ecosystem connect with the Middle East and North Africa. So one of the things that we look at is how do we bring those opportunities to our technology ecosystem here, or whether it be investors or scale-ups, or whether it be just SMEs, and how do we better connect them with opportunities in Iraq, in Masr, in Egypt, whatever it may be. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are trying to do things like this and help, and there's different chambers, and obviously the IBBC. But if that's what you mean, then it's something that we would love to discuss further and help connect. It's a not-for-profit, so it's not about making cash or anything from it. It's about helping create opportunities for both sides and exchange expertise and so on.
And I think from a broader UK government perspective, obviously the Department for International Trade has sort of networks throughout the world, possibly not as well established in some of the digital areas as they might well be, but it's certainly something that I can take back as well for connections and so forth. Anything else from the floor? Yes.
Hello, Tomo Nakamura from Droming. We're level 39. So the question is, the technology that you see in the UK, how can it be applied in Iraq, for example? Is there something that ZainCash are interested in over here? And how do you guys see it as well, the rest of the panel?
Is there anything specific in the UK that you think is applicable, or anything in particular, or technology? Because I don't live here, so I'm not familiar with the technology that's available in the UK. Anything particular in terms of technology that you have in the UK that you're thinking about? Okay, yeah, it's a question to you.
So our company runs a real-time payroll system for low-income workers. So effectively, low-income workers, they don't have to wait until payday to be able to spend. Is that something that you'll be interested in Iraq, for example?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anything that makes sense and is cost-effective and efficient, definitely it's through phases that will be applicable. I think Iraq overall is behind by many years as compared to the UK. So the first thing is actually taking the cash to electronic and then improving this gradually. And the first challenge that we have is actually convincing of the idea, because the majority of the mentality in Iraq is very cash-based. They believe in the cash, and then when you tell them electronic, they need some time to try it out, be comfortable. And as a gentleman said there, he doesn't even trust, okay, where would the money go? You guys, is it safe? Because there's a lot of fear and low confidence with anything that's not in their hands.
Yes.
This is something that they're actually exploring in the UAE at the moment. So there's a company, I'll have to dig it out and I'll share it with you guys, but very similar, and it's aimed at the labour workforce. So if you think of the guys working on construction sites, and there's construction all over the place. So how do you give them access to cash before payday, but also how do you help them save some of that cash so they're still at the end of the month, when they're sending that money back home to India or wherever it may be, is still an option. So that's something that I think that market is ready for and that market is looking at, and happy to connect you there, etc.
If I can just add, in terms of applying UK technology to Iraq, I think Iraq has an opportunity to leapfrog what other countries may have gone through, and I think UK has a centre of excellence for so many things, including cyber and other areas. But I think in applying it, the challenge then becomes, how do you sustain its use, and then how do you ensure that the organisation is mature enough to take it in? I think that's always the biggest challenge. The technology will work wherever it's installed. It doesn't matter where it is, but it's how does the organisation take it on? So I think that's where the Iraqis can help, and that's where having a company that works in Iraq and understands Iraq would be able to make that shift between a global technology and something that's more local, global maybe.
I think the last thing on that, I think what these forums do is that when you look at transfer some of the technology from here to Iraq or wherever it may be, what you need on the ground is that know-how and the access to the market. So when you have family businesses that are looking at what the next 10, 15 years looks like in terms of innovation and where it's going, I think that's where the opportunity is. How do we better match those and give UK companies or UK entrepreneurs that are scaling that access to that local market? And I think that's something that Iraq can learn or look at to do really well from neighbouring countries that have been establishing that kind of bridge between the two and helping implement access to markets in a safe way.
Iain, from you.
Yeah, if I could just add, there is again this question of trust and integrity, and obviously this is a concern for companies, particularly here looking to move into a market like Iraq, where that has been in short supply. And to my mind, that's where an organisation like IBBC and its members can be hugely beneficial in terms of enabling companies who don't have a presence in that market find potential trusted partners who are in the market within the industries where there's an interest, whether it be cyber or elsewhere.
And just a follow-up question actually from me in terms of the adoption of technology and so forth, as to what success would look like for all of you in 5-10 years in terms of kind of digitising the economy, the opportunities, transformation, so forth. Is there anything in particular?
I mean, we hope in 5 years that any individual will be able to pay their bills electronically by online or on their mobile, just like that we see, let's say, in any other country, instead of wasting their days and going to a certain location and paying by cash, and as well just digitalizing the full economy. That's what we want to see, which is applicable in the regional countries like the UAE or even Egypt or even Saudi. So hopefully the next few years we'll see that.
Omar.
I guess I've got two sides here. From an Inervert point of view, we'd like to see more of the family businesses and the corporates in the region innovating and working with technology. From a UK MENA hub point of view, we'd like to see UK companies actually seriously considering the region as a place to scale their businesses and grow, rather than looking at the region as a place just to raise capital. I think there's a lot of opportunities, whether we look at it from sort of smart cities, I know these are buzzwords, or IoT or fintech. So from a UK MENA hub, I think that will be success for us.
From a Restrata perspective, we'd love to see over the next 5 years people and assets feeling more secure and so that they can really focus on their core business. And we think that's absolutely possible, whether it's through secure by design or whether it's through having early engagement with the right experts right at the outset. So you're not having to retrofit things at the front end and actually planning things out properly. From another point of view, my personal perspective, because I've been in the region for a long time, I'd like to see over the next 5 years the power of technology being applied in both governments, in all the governments within Iraq, and enabling a new connection between the citizen and the government, because I think that over the turbulent years has been missing. I think if we can really achieve that, then you can have a more integrated, more reconciled country, because we know that there are serious divisions. I think technology can do that. That's from a personal perspective.
From our perspective, I think what we'd like to see actually is, again, picking up on what I think Yazen said, if Iraq can leapfrog what a lot of the other economies have done by using new technologies to create the infrastructure so that we can see this integrity and this cleanness of process between government and the private sector, that will simply enable people to do business in the right way, which will be, I mean, beneficial for us as a company, beneficial for everybody in this room with interests in Iraq.
And I think that point's very interesting as well, the learning from other countries, the rapid acceleration as well of development too, that leapfrogging potential is huge. And certainly some of the areas that you've talked about there, smart cities, Internet of Things, fintech, cyber, they are all areas of UK strength. So I think the opportunities for that kind of collaboration are very positive. Yes, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Ben Braben from Level 39 in Canary Wharf, which is a community of about 200 smart cities, fintech and cybersecurity companies, so I'm delighted by what you say. And I'm also very encouraged by what all of the panel have said about the prospects for leapfrog technology in Iraq. My question really is, having observed up close here in the UK the challenges faced by entrepreneurs like Durhaming, for example, in bringing technology, transformational capability to bear in an established financial services market in particular. I'd be interested to know, having noticed that the challenges are rarely technical, they're usually cultural, what particular advice you would give to early stage entrepreneurs that are seeking to, as you say, Omar, scale their businesses in the region and in Iraq in particular.
There's a lot of support networks out there in the region who are trying to help sort of entrepreneurs and scale-ups. I think it's no different from any other market. I think the mistake that we make here in the UK over the last few years is looking at it as a market you can just get on the plane and go to and speak to somebody and maybe do a deal or two. It's a slow process. A lot of it is based around trust and relationship building. So it's like anything else. I mean, if you're going to scale your business now and go to the US, you're not going to do it overnight, right? You're going to invest in it. You're going to set up a local team. You're going to build that relationship locally. So that's one thing. The other side of it, especially from a financial services point of view, The region still has a lot of work to do in terms of legislation. So that's changing, slowly. So we've seen in the UAE bankruptcy laws, we've seen the ability to set up your business and register local subsidiaries overnight. So that stuff is helping. But I think what we need to do is offer more route to market to these entrepreneurs from people such as yourself, Ben, Level 39s. I think we need, and other spaces, we need to be building relationships with the region. So we need to look at how we're going to help these entrepreneurs go. So we need to be looking at building relationship with incubators, accelerators, and support networks on the ground, who I know are dying to build relationship with the UK, but it's not been easy. So that's one of the things that we should be doing over the next year or two, is looking how do we better connect our ecosystem with Iraq, with the UAE, with Egypt, and help create that bridge for entrepreneurs looking to scale both ways. It's not a one-way process. There's a lot of really cool innovation in the region that can come this way, that can benefit from being here, and there's companies in places like Amman, around like Liwa, around crowdfunding, that could benefit from being in the UK. So it's a two-way process. But it all comes back to relationship and building that network.
Any other questions from the floor? Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. My name is Ali Abbas Kayun, legal advisor of State Company of Iraqi Ports, Ministry of Transportation. My particular point that I'd like to address is the investment in the Al Faw Grand Port. As you know, the Al Faw Grand Port is one of the main strategic ports, a huge project in Iraq. And if I have an idea about it, it can change or affect the whole international transportation map to link Asia and Europe, as located in a very strategic place in the north of Arab Gulf. So we would like to see more support or investment in this, in the construction of this port, because it will play, hopefully, a great role in the economy of Iraq. Thank you.
Any responses to that?
Yes, I mean, it's an enormous question. Grand Al Faw, if successful, will be absolutely a game changer, potentially for international trade. Its requirements, of course, are also very significant, not just nationally within Iraq, both for the port, for the railway infrastructure, for the interconnectivity between the different modes of transport, clearly for security through country, with connection across borders, and not least, of course, for the investment requirements. And that investment across borders covers not just between the borders with Iraq, but then beyond Iraq, moving right the way up into Europe. I know there's a certain amount of hesitation to believe that it is going to happen because, of course, over the last decade or so, there have been so many issues. But as Iraq settles down, I think it's something that perhaps taken offline is we would certainly be very interested to explore further to see what the potential there is.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
السلام عليكم. باسم السعدي، شركة أصوات البرية للتجارة. عندنا مشكلة الآن تجارية بالعراق، يعني هي ما تختص بالسادة أكثر، ربما أحد المسؤولين إذا حاضر أو جماعة من الحكومة العراقية قد يلتفتون إلى هذه النقطة. بالعراق الآن أكو 3 مناطق تجارية فيها 3 أنظمة مختلفة تطبق عليها. المنطقة الأولى هي منطقة كردستان، اللي المواد المستوردة اللي تدخل إلى كردستان تدفع الجمرك، الجمارك كاستمز يدفعوها من المنافذ اللي في كردستان، وهذه المدفوعات ما تعترف بها الحكومة العراقية. وبالتالي من توصل إلى منطقة قريبة من بغداد متعارف عليها الصفرة يسموها الآن، ترغمهم الحكومة العراقية على أن يتحولون إلى الجمارك، وبالتالي يقمرقون مرة أخرى. هذا الحكي صار له 2 سنين تقريبا، هذا الكلام يعني منذ 2 سنين. الآن تقريبا 50 يوم أو أقل ربما من 50 يوم بدأت تطبق على المنطقة الجنوبية. الآن المنافذ الجمركية اللي تدخل للمنطقة الجنوبية من أم قصر مثلا أو المداخل مال على الكوت ويا مهران ويا إيران، يدفعون جمارك كذلك وهي بالمنطقة الجنوبية ومنطقة غير خاضعة لكردستان وللحكومة العراقية، وإلا أن توصل إلى مداخل بغداد في منطقة اليوسفية أو في منطقة جرف النداف. هنالك لجان أخرى تأخذهم أيضا إلى أبو غريب يقمرقوهم مرة أخرى. يعني أنا أعرف حضرتكم ما مختصين بالموضوع، ولكن موضوع مهم. أنا أتمنى أحد يسمعنا. ما أعرف، ربما الميديا تشتغل أو السوشيال ميديا تعرف بهالمشكلة هذه. شكرا.
Yeah, unless somebody wants to respond, I think that may not be for the panel. Anybody else with a question for our panelists? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Haval Kadhim from the Al-Kindi Society of Engineers. I invite you panelists and the rest of the community here to set up these accelerators for innovation and entrepreneurship in Kurdistan or in the rest of Iraq if you're scared to go there. Baghdad now is the tech city hub of Iraq. We've seen things like Fikra Space, the Recreo network, and so on. Why not set up a workshop to look at helping some of these innovators and entrepreneurs to actually connect with you, businesses and industry? And we at the Society of Engineers here in the UK are going to do exactly that in a few months. We invite you to come and join us in Baghdad to make this a reality. What challenges does the panel see of this actually happening? I mean, I have seen some of the work in Dubai, but do you think it can be replicated in Baghdad? Thank you.
I don't think you ever want to replicate what Dubai's done, but look, I think it's the right thing to do. Building this ecosystem in Iraq is the best thing to do, building it ground up. And it's what we've seen happen in London over the last 6-7 years, in the UK and everywhere else in the world. I think from our point of view, I would happily jump on a plane next week and help you. And I'm sure there's a lot of people here in the UK that would love to do that. And if you look at sort of the accelerators and the ecosystem here are all looking at ways to replicate that and to do that elsewhere, apart from now. Like I said before, the biggest challenge is having the people on the ground that can take this on and maintain it and make it sustainable, because the last thing you want to do is a bunch of people from the UK or the US coming down every 2-3 weeks and doing that for you. But if you have ways, and I know we've spoken about it, a few colleagues, it's definitely the time to do it. It's definitely the time to set up that and start working ground up. And if you look at it from the other end, won't put Yazen under the pressure, but people like Zain have done amazing work in the region, have done amazing work in Amman and elsewhere. So part of this is how do you engage those companies, the GEs of this world and the Shells of this world, to do stuff at this level rather than talking about oil and gas and all that sort of stuff, which I'm sure is great, but it's about looking at what's the next 30-40 years have in store for Iraq and supporting people like you do that. But from an Inervert point of view, from a UK MENA hub point of view, happy to help. And you know, I was in Cairo 3 days ago with the British Council and ambassador there, and they're doing a lot of work ground up for whether looking at social enterprise or innovation funds, and these initiatives are being replicated. So we'd love to speak about it.
Actually, Zain, so we heard this. So Zain is actually working on an incubator with the government, innovation funds to incentivize these entrepreneurs. And I believe I've been in Iraq for 1 year so far, and I've really seen a lot of talented individuals, and we brought a lot on board. So our average age in our company is about 24. We have 18 years old who we think are very smart. We brought them on board. And we're actually working with Fikra Space. Just last week, we did this Facebook boat challenge. So we brought entrepreneurs together, change ideas. We promote these events. And we definitely, I personally believe entrepreneurship is the way to go for the country. And we are also a startup within Zain.
Okay, there's probably time for one last quick question before we wrap up, if there's anything. Or not, if there are no questions from the floor. Okay, well, I'll use this opportunity then to say thank you to the panelists for the discussion and for all the questions from the audience too. It sounds like, as I said, there are huge opportunities for optimism here, building things ground up and obviously building on that dynamic and young and entrepreneurial population as well. So thank you very much to Yazen, Altimimi, Omar, Hassan, Botan, Osman and Iain Rawlinson for this debate. And I very much wish you all the best in the years and months ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to just add my thanks to the panel members and, of course, to Maeve for her fantastic chairing of that session. I have the privilege of coming to this meeting on an annual basis. And when we talk about rising confidence, I think about my own levels of confidence and where they come from. And over the years, we've discussed things that have never even touched on this agenda because we've had to get foundations in place. And to sit here listening about how can we create or co-create startup workshops, talking about home-to-fibre networks, 3G and 4G coverage, real-time payment systems. This shows that we've got the luxury of having a conversation. As I think one of our panel members mentioned, that this is really important stuff, but it's also something which we've never had the opportunity to discuss because there's been so many other things that have taken priority. So my confidence, and I suspect the confidence from many of us here, comes from the fact that we now know that we're in a changing environment where we can move on to a much more sophisticated agenda, and I'm personally very excited about it. So once again, thanks again to everybody.